The Story of Dumalawi, a Filipino folktale. Narrated by PiEnglish. Apanidala and Apanabalinian had a son whose name was Dumalawi. When the son had become a young man, his father one day was very angry with him, and tried to think of some way in which to destroy him. The next morning he said to Dumalawi, "Son, sharpen your knife, and we will go to the forest to cut some bamboo." So Dumalawi sharpened his knife and went with his father to the place where the bamboo grew, and they cut many sticks and sharpened them like spears at the end. Dumalawi wondered why they made them thus, but when they had finished, Apanidala said, "Now, son, you throw them at me, so that we can see which is the braver." "No, father," answered Dumalawi. "You throw first, if you want to kill me." So Apanidala threw the bamboo sticks one by one at his son, but he could not hit him. Then it was the son's turn to throw, but he said, "No, I cannot. You are my father, and I do not want to kill you." So they went home. But Dumalawi was very sorrowful, for he knew now that his father wanted to destroy him. When his mother called him to dinner, he could not eat. Although he had been unsuccessful in his first attempt, Apanidala did not give up the idea of getting rid of his son, and the next day he said, "Come, Dumalawi, we will go to our little house in the field and repair it, so that it will be a protection when the rainy season sets in." The father and son went together to the field, and when they reached the little house, Apanidala, pointing to a certain spot in the ground, said, "Dig there, and you will find a jar of basi which I buried when I was a boy. It will be very good to drink now." Dumalawi dug up the jar and they tasted the wine, and it was so pleasing to them that they drank 3 coconut shells full, and Dumalawi became drunk. While his son lay asleep on the ground, Apanidala decided that this was a good time to destroy him, so he used his magical power, and there arose a great storm which picked up Dumalawi in his sleep and carried him far away. And the father went home alone. Now when Dumalawi awoke, he was in the middle of a field so wide that whichever way he looked, he could not see the end. There were neither trees nor houses in the field, and no living thing except himself. And he felt a great loneliness. By and by he used his magical power, and many betel nuts grew in the field, and when they bore fruit it was covered with gold. "This is good," said Dumalawi, "for I will scatter these betel nuts, and they shall become people, who will be my neighbors." So in the middle of the night he cut the gold-covered betel nuts into many small pieces which he scattered in all directions. And in the early morning, when he awoke, he heard many people talking around the house, and many roosters crowed. Then Dumalawi knew that he had companions, and upon going out he walked about where the people were warming themselves by fires in their yards, and he visited them all. In one yard was a beautiful maiden, Dipilison, and after Dumalawi had talked with her and her parents, he went on to the other yards, but she was ever in his thoughts. As soon as he had visited all the people, he returned to the house of Dipilison and asked her parents if he might marry her. They were unwilling at first, for they feared that the parents of Dumalawi might not like it, but after he had explained that his father and mother did not want him, they gave their consent, and Dipilison became his bride. Soon after the marriage they decided to perform a ceremony for the spirits. So Dumalawi sent for the betel nuts which were covered with gold, and when they were brought to her, she said, "You betel nuts that are covered with gold, come here and oil yourselves and go and invite all the people in the world to come to our ceremony." So the betel nuts oiled themselves and went to invite the people in the different towns. Soon after this Dumalawi, the mother of Dumalawi, sat alone in her house, still mourning the loss of her son, when suddenly she was seized with a desire to chew betel nut. "What ails me?" she said to herself. "Why do I want to chew? I had not intended to eat anything while Dumalawi was away." So saying, she took down her basket that hung on the wall, and saw in it a betel nut covered with gold, and when she was about to cut it, it said, "Do not cut me, for I have come to invite you to the ceremony which Dumalawi and his wife are to make." Dumalawi was very happy, for she knew now that her son still lived, and she told all the people to wash their hair and prepare to go to the rite. So they washed their clothes and their hair and started for the home of Dumalawi, and Apanidala, the father of the boy, followed, but he looked like a crazy man. When the people reached the river near the town, Dumalawi sent alligators to take them across, but when Apanidala got on the alligator's back it dived, and he was thrown back upon the bank of the river. All the others were carried safely over, and Apanidala, who was left on the bank alone, shouted as if crazy until Dumalawi sent another alligator to carry him across. Then Dumalawi had food brought and Dumalawi passed Basi in a little jar that looked like a fist, and though each guest drank a cupful of the sweet wine, the little jar was still a third full. After they had eaten and drunk, Dumalawi spoke, and, telling all the people that she was glad to have Dumalawi for a daughter-in-law, added, "Now we are going to pay the marriage price according to our custom. We shall fill the spirit house 9 times with different kinds of jars." Then she called, "You spirits who live in different springs, get the jars which Dumalawi must pay as a marriage price for Dumalawi." The spirits did as they were commanded, and when they brought the jars and had filled the spirit house 9 times, Dumalawi said to the parents of Dumalawi, "I think that now we have paid the price for your daughter." But Dumalawi, the mother of Dumalawi, was not satisfied, and said, "No, there is still more to pay." "Very well," replied Dumalawi. "Tell us what it is, and we will pay it." Then Dumalawi called a pet spider and said, "You big spider, go all around the town, and as you go spin a thread on which Dumalawi must string golden beads." So the spider spun the thread, and Dumalawi again called to the spirits of the springs, and they brought golden beads which they strung on the thread. Then Dumalawi hung on the thread, and when it did not break she declared that the debt was all paid. After this the people feasted and made merry, and when at last they departed for home, Dumalawi refused to go with his parents, but remained with his wife in the town he had created. The end.